Like you can feel when you've got
You
whole
can
body alignment,
feel.
and it's not that common. It's
Mhm.
like probably most of the time we don't have a whole body yes about things, and
Yeah,
we're still saying yes. We're still doing things that we don't really
exactly.
align with.
Actually, it's just like having this conversation with my friends. Like, I, I think they actually asked me this too. Like, how would, and then I would like, you really have to listen to what your mind, body, heart, and soul says, because it really does tell you. But I tell them, but the thing is, here's the catch. It's actually like easy to do that, but the journey to developing that skill is hard. And the thing is, in order to reach that certain of level of being a skillful listener of your own self, the irony of saying that is to actually like learning to always tune into yourself. And that means like going back to what we have said, learning how to do workouts or exercise, because that means you're pulling the power back into yourself again. Meditation too. It's all about yourself. And then reading too. It's all about yourself. Really just like fueling you up yourself.
Mm,
If you kind of like always do those things and build the habit and it becomes your superpower, then that will you're gonna reap off all these benefits. You learn how to be a skillful listener to what your body, mind, and soul says, because you know yourself by now by doing or committing all to those things. It will tell you, oh, Jasmine, or like you don't want this, but the outside world wants this, and then it's
nice.
not allowed to you. You have to listen to it.
Beautiful.
And then that's when you also learn how to the superpower to be always on trust.
Emerge Stories is a place where, as the name implies, you are going to hear stories. Stories from people all over the Philippines who have come from many different types of backgrounds, and especially people who have gone through struggles, people who have gone through the challenging parts of life. And I hope that these stories will relate for you in some way, that some of these stories will really land for you because these people have gone through probably just about the same thing you might be going through right now. Welcome back once again to Emerge Stories. The story we're going to be telling today is that of Jasmine Seale. She is the founder and CEO of a marketing company out of Manila called Soul Creatives. She's a passionate creative with an eye for aesthetics and for telling stories, and she's helped startups and small businesses across the globe in their digital marketing, telling their brand stories through content. Jasmine is also an incredible example of somebody who is on a very intentional journey of personal growth. She's someone who really thinks about who she wants to become next. She has a high degree of self awareness. And really, the journey she's gotten herself onto was sparked in the darkest and most difficult parts of her life. I know you're going to find this story inspiring like I did. And if I'm right, please take a moment to share this with somebody that you think needs to hear it. And as always, thank you so much for being here. Let's jump in to Jasmine's story. Jasmine, welcome to Emerge Stories. I'm so happy to have you here.
I'm so happy to. I've been looking forward to have this conversation with you guys.
Me too. So, you and I just met somewhat recently, and I think I noticed an article you wrote on LinkedIn that caught my attention, and I reached out, and then we had dinner in Manila, and was such an amazing conversation. So, I'm looking forward to you telling a little bit of your story here because I found it very inspiring personally. I guess let's start out with tell our audience a little bit about who Jasmine is right now. What are you doing in the world? What are you proud of in your life right now? Just any of those things.
Yeah. You know what? This is like the hardest question to answer. Who are you? Like before, I think I also wrote an article about that. Like when people like ask me like work and all those things. But now as you grow old, like it's harder and harder to answer that. But yeah, so I guess like I would say I'm just like a 29 young woman trying to navigate the world of entrepreneurship. So what I'm currently doing is, yeah, I'm a founder of creative marketing agency. So we're based in Manila. We cater for both global and local brands. We're mostly focused or specialized in digital marketing, licensing, and branding. So yeah, that's what I usually do. And also on the sides, I do social media, digital marketing, consultation for other brands. So it's a busy life. So like juggling of multiple projects. So basically that's what I do right now.
And how long have you been in the entrepreneur journey?
I would like count the years that I've been like for 6 years almost now. And then but I started my business or my company a year before. So actually like that this June we celebrated our 1 year. Yeah. But I've been like doing so like some I would call it a solo entrepreneurship. So it's been like 6 years now.
So a solopreneur for quite a while now, and then just recently formed more of a corporation with partners and things like that.
Yeah, with
Yeah,
partners, with a team and a team of specialists and creatives that I work with or I collaborate with to deliver all these marketing projects that we do.
nice. When it comes to how you see yourself able to lead, or who you see yourself as now, like what are some things you're proud of that you're able to bring to the world?
Yeah, I think one of the proudest things that I was able to do. Like I actually wrote a content recently about this because the prompt is like, what is the proudest accomplishment you ever had? And I answered it on a caption and I told myself, I think it's like forming a team and a culture within my company that I feel like everyone is really happy and succeeding on the field that they are working on.
Nice.
Yeah, like I could say numbers, averages that I have reached for clients or KPIs, but those are things are like fleeting feeling. But what I think is like the most fulfilling for me is like knowing that my team is happy or the people that I work with or we work with or our clientels are happy. So I think that's like my biggest accomplishment, just like making people
Building the team
happy around me. Yes.
and that's awesome. Congrats on the success of that. So I'd love to hear a little bit about, because the content that I saw some of your content that caught my attention, and then I've seen more since then, and I've had conversations with you. It's very clear to me that you're someone who has been doing a lot of work on yourself, like inner work. You've really learned a lot about who you are, and you seem like you've made an exceptionally serious commitment to personal development, personal growth, more than a lot of people I know, like to a really exceptional degree. So I'd love to go back into your backstory, hear a little bit of how did that happen? Where'd you start life? Where'd you grow up?
Yeah. Yeah, actually, yeah, I think it started during the darkest time of my life. I really call that if there will be like a plague or like in a history of a civilization, that would be mine in my life. So during that time of my life, so imagine in a 2 year span, I had lost my best friend suddenly. We're so young that time. We just graduated college, so like we have so much vision of doing things together, or so much dreams. But I lost her; she passed away, and then also I got my heart broken. I think the person that I will probably say the first person I love, and then I got heartbroken, and then I lost a job too. And then I also was diagnosed with a rare skin disease. It's actually skin tuberculosis. And during the period of 1 year, I was medicating myself, had two surgeries.
Mm,
So I actually don't know if you guys noticed, but like a battle scar, I would say, in my face. So it's more apparent.
definitely.
Yeah.
I cannot see it here for sure.
Yeah, you cannot see it, but in person, it's more apparent. I really have a battle scar. So I had a mass or a kind of like a tumor growing in my face. So
Mm,
of course, as a young woman, like
that's
I
really
know, yes,
like traumatic.
it's a traumatic because I'm doing marketing for SM during that time, and it's with
Let's just drill into that for just a second, because
oh,
and this is a little bit of a side detour. I want to come back to that darkest period because I know this is just part of the dark period, but I had a cyst here on my face and I have a little scar from it, which I'm sure is nothing like what you had, and it wasn't a disease. But I'm a guy when I was already in my late 30s, I think. I was very shocked at the emotional, like it really messed with me. I was like, I felt really, it was very difficult. It got very big and I just couldn't stop thinking about it. And it really messed with my psyche. And in the Philippines too, like being employed, a bit of an advantage if you look good like you do. So then that's really cutting it. I'm just guessing. I'm just
yeah.
trying to imagine being you. What did that, I guess, talk a little bit about how all the different emotional
Yeah.
experiences there.
You nailed it. It was really traumatic for me. And during this time is I think it's the first stage in my life that I feel I'm not insecure anymore. Because I grew up being so insecure, feeling so little. Because I just a little backstory why I feel that way. Because like I grew up with, because like I have British ancestry, so my siblings are actually really tall, white skin, fair skin, and very Filipina looking. So morena, small, tiny, all those things. So like growing up, it's always a noise in my head or other external noise that, oh, why are you like that? And like I don't have an answer to that. Like, cause this is what God gave me. So yeah, so like I grew up really insecure. I was actually right now that I actually speak this right now that I just voice out my truth. So yeah, like and then during that period of time, that's like only the time that I feel like I'm starting to feel comfortable with my body. So I'm okay already by being small, by being morena, and then the the skin disease happened. So it was actually really traumatic. So I actually remember asking myself like, why now? Now that I feel like I'm being loved or I feel like I'm starting to love
Mm.
myself and that thing happened. So I really don't have an answer during that time, but now I do have the answer why that thing happened. So
What do you think that is?
I think it's what a form of ascension, I would say, or I would say a form of successfully. There's no way that you're not gonna elevate your life after that or your mindset. So here we are now. Yeah, so it was really traumatic emotionally and physically because and financially too because I was medicating for more than a year. So like most of my salary that I'm earning in that corporate job that I had was just going through all those medications. So yeah, it was really hard and also but what taught me during that time is I really have to take care of myself physically. So there was a silver lining to that because I've always been sickly growing up because my mom would tell several stories of me like almost dying when I was a kid because of my asthma. So that phase, there's I didn't really have any choice anymore but to learn how to take care of myself physically. So I think as much as you take care of yourself mentally and emotionally, make yourself into self development or self care, you also have to take care of your physical aspect. I think it's needs to be a holistic approach. So yeah, that's like the lesson of things like yeah.
So you're looking back now on this period of your time that you call the darkest life period
Mm.
of your life, and you lost your best friend right after college, heartbroken, lost a job, and then you have this skin disease that comes right when you're starting to love yourself, like you're starting to feel good about yourself, but then you have this really difficult thing. And but now you're talking about that period of time as almost sounds like you see it a bit as a gift or you found the silver lining in it. So how long did it take you to realize the benefits of that period of time? What was that journey like going through it and then transitioning out of it? What do you think, what are the good things that happened for you?
So that's been like 6 or 5 years now. So I think it was a catalyst, what I would say, but the journey is still ongoing right now. I don't think it will ever end as much as there's us for every one of us. There's always a lesson to learn. So that would I would say the catalyst. Yeah, what I learned from this, I think I mentioned this to you when we met and had dinner that I really don't have choice anymore. It was a slap in the face by life, universe, or God, or whatever you want to call it. It was it's life's way of telling me that you really need to work on yourself. And that's what I've been doing ever since. So it's been a journey of that. And I don't think I have reached some sort of pinnacle. But actually, last night, I'm gonna be so vulnerable about this. I was like looking at the mirror and then I felt teary eyed and looked at my reflection. And I was like, I said to myself, I'm glad that you didn't give up. Yeah, so it's been a journey of that. So it was a catalyst of the darkest period of my life. But the silver lining really is I learned so much from it. it pushed you to my own limits, and a lot of lessons or wisdom that came with it. Lessons and wisdom that I still carry with myself, that I also try to share with people around me, or like my team, or my anyone that I get to share to. So, yeah, and
I want to hear some of those lessons. But I also just want to go back for a minute. You said last night, you were just looking in the mirror and feeling emotional,
yeah.
being grateful to yourself that you didn't give up. Can you go back to the time, like a time in the past when you felt like giving up? What was the narrative back when you felt like giving up?
A lot. Like, what would be like first is because I started as a freelancer of my career. Right, 6 years ago, my entrepreneurship journey is like started as a. I always tell this to my team. I remember visually and vividly on my phone looking at my account, and it's 0.01 peso. I remember that, like it's a BPI account, and I remember it like just like that one. And I was like, my headspace before I was like, how the hell I gotta do this? Like, I won't have recurring income, like working on a corporate,
No
like
salary, no trust,
no
no
salary.
reliable. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Be also realistic. I was still living with my parents, but also I'm the eldest. So those kind of pressures, like, oh, I remember my dad. It was like, like he would ask me, so what is your plan? And I was like, I don't have a plan, but I know it will make sense one day. And it made sense. So that's the all I always talking into my head with this negative headspace. Or there's so little voice in my head that would say that just trust this, that even it doesn't look like that it will work out. And then I always just listen to that little voice, and even like how many shit happened in my life, it still works. I think my life hack. Not That's how I shape my mindset. Like it will always happen, especially when you're an entrepreneur. Like financial statements and all those things, of course, and a lot of troubleshooting. Like the entrepreneur's life is not really easy. It's also lonely. And I also like living independently. I don't really have someone to talk to all the time. And yeah, so there would be like when you're in that headspace. But I just try to find in all those ruminating and all those clouds in my head, that little
A
voice
little
that was,
voice.
yeah,
And
that's
you just
just
you
trust.
try to listen to that voice.
Yeah.
This is something that I am very intentionally, consciously trying to like strengthen this muscle of being able to
Mhm.
really trust. I don't know, trust the universe, trust myself, like just believe that the more we trust, the more things just fall into our laps and fall into place. And I find it to be experientially for myself, I find it to be true that that when I'm really in that state of trust, things just happen and I can't even believe them. Meeting you at exactly the right time, and just like a lot of different, there's so many things, but I still tend to slip out of it sometimes when my rational, logical, analytical brain, like looking at the bank account or looking at like how am I going to pay these things, and whatever
Right?
other scarcity triggers happen for me. But I just want to ask you, because that is something that in our first conversation really stuck out to me as well. This seems to be a superpower that you have, to just be able to consistently trust. I just got that vibe from you. But what would you say to somebody who thinks that's just bullcrap? What if somebody's, yeah, that doesn't work. You can't just trust. Like, how do you
True.
convince somebody to try it?
I met businessmen that I was like would say, yeah, that's bullshit, like all those things. But I would remind them that remember the time that you felt good, and then suddenly your business is healthy and happy too, and they will think, yeah, that's actually really true, because like your mind is really a reflection of your reality, and then trusting actually is kind of you just swallow that idea, and then okay, even but this is the thing, it's what you said, I actually like what you said, it's a muscle. You really have to always train yourself to choose it. So meaning like every instance that life will give you, like I would say, a choice or a practice, you have to do it. And next thing that you would know, it's already been a habit and a superpower. Yeah. And then like, just to come back to what you have answered, like how I would convince people of this. My sister also like always doubt about this because she's like in med school, and then like of course like studying and always like her mind is always in this lack mentality that I might fail, I might not be a doctor. But I would remind her, like, but do you just remember the instances in your life that it seems impossible, but here you are. You're actually about to graduate now. So that's why I go to people, because I wouldn't really know what happened to a person's life, but I would always ask them this from, there was a time in your life that you probably have questioned yourself that,
Mm.
like, we have been through that, like it's different scenarios and all those things, and but it all worked out, right? And then if you just try to for a second look into your life, actually always just gets better. Like it's not an easy ride to get up making it great, but it's just always just levels up. But of course it's your joy, your choice and your journey.
Do you think that conversely, when we focus on fear and lack, that kind of ends up steering our
Mhm.
lives in those directions?
Yeah, I actually really do. In my experience, that's how it works. We probably also have heard of the concept of law of attraction. So meaning is like attracts like. So what is in your head comes out as what it is your reality. Like negative thoughts also comes out as to bad outcomes. So there's no scientific evidence that proves this, but I think this is one of the, I would say, secret laws or unwritten laws of life. I think I also remember mentioning this to you. I think life has this unwritten laws that if we listen carefully would be kind of win from this life that we call. So those things, yeah, and kind of like I would say, like law of gravity. You don't actually know or see this, or it's not a tangible thing, but we do believe that there's a law of gravity. We're like grounded on our feet, standing up here. Oh, and then there's a lot of unwritten laws that we don't see.
Yeah. Jasmine, you said earlier that there was this period of time where you're going through such a dark time of your life, and then you felt like it was a slap in the face and you had no choice but to, or you heard it as a message that you needed to start taking care of yourself differently. And one of the things you said was that taking care of yourself physically, that you believe that's critical. And I totally agree. I read a book a while back called The Power of Full Engagement. It talked about four energy types
Mhm.
that we have: physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. And physical is, you could think of it as the foundational energy source of all the others. If you don't have good physical energy, physical state, like you're going to have a hard time working on the others. So I really like that. I'm curious, what did you do to shift? Like, how did you, it sounds like you made a change, but what were the changes or the shifts that you made?
I actually really had a lifestyle change. And that will always be actually my professional guideline too. If I can sustain that lifestyle to give me self care and self love, I wouldn't go into that professional path. So, like the lifestyle change that I did is actually I started working out. So, since I was, I didn't have any money, so I didn't have any access or resources to go to fancy gyms. So I just work out on my go on YouTube, started like copying all this stuff, body weight exercises, the yoga, and then another thing. So that's your physical and mental thing that I have done is like practicing meditation. And it's always been my guiding factor. And it's like my recipe really. Like actually when people ask me like what would be the recipe for self-development, I would always curious. Like that means have this mindset that always I want to learn.
You want to learn?
Whatever that means. We
Yeah.
have different kinds of interests. So those three things I've been doing ever since. So working out, meditation. So staying curious, that means I always read books, read articles online, whatever there is. Because like I mentioned, I was a freelancer. And then when I started, digital marketing was just booming. So there's a lot of things to learn. And then just like by reading articles online, watching YouTube videos, doing a lot of courses free because I don't have money. So I didn't have money that time. There's a lot of free resources out there. And that's when I committed to this. And the next thing I knew, I'm making money out of it. And then, of course, I still try to like go into that lifestyle of just, I would call this actually empowering myself. So,
If you had to describe commitment, like, why does that matter that you committed to it?
because every day you don't want to do it. But if you are committed, you're gonna go back to that feeling. I
Yeah.
committed to this, and that would be like, I would say, the respect to yourself. If you are the respect that, or how would I say, is like respect to the person that you want to be.
Mm.
Because when I started this,
Respect for the person you want to be. That is beautiful.
yeah,
Love it. Nice.
yeah, 'cause I got that line because I remember when I started doing this, when after that very dark time in my life, my ultimate goal was I want to look into the mirror and say to myself that I love the person that I was looking at, that I would don't need anyone's I love you, but that I love you, I need. And then that's what I just did. So I stay committed to these things like working out, doing meditation, trying to learn as much as I can. Not just meaning like learning about self development, but all the things that interest me personally, because we have different interests. So I just did it and did that. And that's why, like I mentioned earlier, I look at a mirror and I see my reflection. I'm grateful for her because she didn't give up. She stayed committed. And then because of that, she created the woman that I am now. So
I
yeah.
I have such a similar experience where much later in my years, like I was in my late 30s when I really
Mhm.
started committing to thinking about who do I actually want to turn myself into and how do I do that. And I'd never really thought very much about this before. And 10 years later, I look back and I would say the exact same things were the most important things, like meditation, exercise, like a commitment to an exercise routine, learning how to build those habits, doing them consistently, and who it turned me into. And then also just like all the books I read. And so those three things, I love those as the foundations. And a lot of people have heard these things before, right? But then
Yeah.
prioritizing them enough, I think, requires that you believe that they will get you some payoff. So first, I want to ask you a couple of tactical questions around meditation, exercise. You already mentioned a few things about exercise, maybe the meditation and the learning. I would love to ask a few questions about. But before that, what gave you the belief that if you built these habits of exercise, meditation, and learning, consistent curiosity and learning new things, that it would turn you into someone that you would love more or respect more?
So like I mentioned, like I really believe for things to be holistic, and a holistic approach to things. So that means like I really like look into this, like, so I need mental thing, spiritually, physical, and emotional. So like mentally, I know it's like really learning and reading books or articles, and then spiritually, actually it's meditation, and of course like mentally too, and emotionally, when you learn how to meditate, you have control over your mind, and then means you have control over your body, and that leading you to having control over your reality. And that means how you interact or respond to people. But I would want to answer your question in a very practical way, like really a how to, or
Yeah,
like
sure.
an action plan, let's say. So you need to read, because you can't like do meditation like suddenly 30 minutes, 1 hour. Like that's impossible. Like when I was starting, I would only meditate 1 minute a day in the morning. And then consistency doesn't look like always a straight line. Some days I just feel breathing for 10 seconds, then do it. But what is important, you always have to do it every day. And then another thing is you have to be kind to yourself when you can't do it, because we're humans, we're not robots that we can. Be kind to yourself, give it to yourself, you can. If you don't have the willpower, but those things, you learn those things, or those wisdom comes from when you're starting doing all this self-care journey to into self-love. So another thing, like I would commit also in the morning to read one article too,
Okay.
all the time.
I want to ask you about reading in a second, but I really want to go back to meditation for a minute because you, me separately, and lots of other people that I've met report the same benefits, that it's just like life changing.
It is life changing.
And yet the vast majority of people, even though they've heard this, and even though many people have tried a little bit, have not probably done it enough to
Mm.
where they got the understanding of the benefits, I think. And yeah, I would love to just drill down a little bit more into that. Like how long? So first of all, I love what you said about consistency over intensity. 1 minute a day, that's amazing. I think that's great advice. Don't worry about trying to do something heavy or difficult. Just do it consistently, build the habit, and then you can ramp up as you go. Because if you're just doing 1 minute a day, you're probably not feeling some huge change very quickly. So what made you believe that was a habit worth building? Did you have other people that you talked to, that role models, or do you remember what made you believe that it would pay off?
I think probably I have read it somewhere on an
Okay,
article, but I wouldn't remember who this
that's
is.
fine.
But yeah,
So you just heard it enough so that now people are
yes.
hearing us and they're like, okay, all right, maybe Eli and Jasmine are not crazy, and maybe meditation is really worth giving it another try. Did you just do it on your own in silence, or did you use some guided meditations? What did you use in the beginning?
So there's a lot in YouTube when I was starting doing this free stuff. Because like I really don't have resources to buy fancy things. So like when people would say, "Oh, self care," it's like for people who have money. That's not true. When I started this, I really didn't have any money. So in YouTube, there's 1 minute, 2 minutes, even 50 minutes. So when I started trying to have some resources, that's when I bought apps. So I actually started using Calm, and then, of course, I outgrew this. I went into Headspace. I outgrew this too. And then, like, I met my spiritual mentor. And then I actually kind of like outgrew that too. Because that's how it is. When you just say it's consistent to it, you will outgrow some. And that's actually good. And
Yep.
now I actually like just do timer and like sit with my own thoughts or
Mm-hmm.
like empty head. It will take time, but also be kind to yourself. The goal is not to be great at these things. The goal is to have so much love for yourself. Like when people ask me, what is self love? How do you attain self love? That I love myself, the person who I am outside and internally. And like, how do you, they would say, how would you attain that peace and self love? And I would always say that it's like more of building a lot of self care practices. So self care leads to self love because those things are two different things that people actually confuse as self love. And self care practices are actually, I would say, different or tailored to each of us because we have our own individualities. So you need to find what works for you. But like my guiding principle on this one is that's like the three formula to it. Yeah.
And
So
just to wrap up the meditation conversation, what would you say some of the, looking back now, what are some of the benefits that you would articulate or that you observe? What do you think's changed for you?
So, like I mentioned, like growing up, I'm so insecure. There's a lot of external noises in my head. They're literally embedded here, stories that from people or stories that I tell myself. One benefits of meditation is that meditation silence all those noises. Like when I sit there, like people would ask, "What are you thinking?" Really, nothing, because like it's empty and I'm not conserving, I'm not utilizing energy because my head is empty. It's just peaceful. So that's one, also one benefits that I would say. Another one is focused.
Mm,
Like the moment I go into work or into reading, I would really zone out because like I am in really in the
mm.
present
And
moment.
zone
So
in
that's,
to what you're doing.
yeah, because that's one thing that also like meditation also teaches you to be really present in
Mm,
whatever you're doing. So that means if I am talking to you, to another person, I am really present. There's nothing happening around me but this. If I am eating, there's nothing really happening, but I'm just with me and my food. The same thing when I'm working too. So that's one of the things that a third thing that I would say the benefit of meditation. And wouldn't it be that so powerful and so nice to be always present with whatever you're
yeah.
doing, mister? Because that means like you are really living. You're not, your head is not in the future or in the past. What of the already what happened? Because that would be a waste of time and
Mm,
energy just thinking of what the things happen or the
yeah.
future that you don't know what would happen.
I used to be so much thinking about the future, and I think I had no idea that I wasn't living in the moment, or that I wasn't present in the moment with my consciousness and focus, until I built a meditation habit, and yeah,
Right.
and started realizing, oh my God, I've been spending all these years just constantly in the future and never in the moment. We only ever get to
Yeah.
live right now. We never get to live in the past or the future, right? It's crazy.
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
what I also learned when like my best friend passed away. She was so young. She was 22 or 23 that time. And it made me realize, oh wow, or something.
Mm,
And then I always like I'm really full of I wasn't really an anxious person. So would it be like a waste of time? It's like thinking of the future that might not happen.
yeah.
But if I live in this moment right now, then I'm really consuming what life is giving me in a very positive way. Yeah, because like I like that's why like in my meditation I remember in Calm that app it would say that's why they call it the present. It is a gift. And it is really a gift to be really in the moment. Because that's why I also realized that the more that you are present, it gives you so much joy. Because imagine if you are with someone, or you're talking to your lover, your mom, your dad, or like someone special for you, and you really are in that moment, and it gives you really more connection to that person. Because like your head is not in a different
Yeah.
conversation or something
Yeah.
that you have to do, and
Totally.
life is offering you a gift.
Jasmine, you've shared a bunch of amazing tips and parts of your story so far. I know there's tons that we won't get to
Yeah,
today. Learning how to take ownership of your own self-care, and that leads to self-love, and being able to
I know.
build those habits even if you didn't have the resources to pay for a gym, learning how to do it from YouTube. Going back, there's just one more thing from all of that that I wanted to zero in on. So you said you were committed to reading an article every day, and that you are curious and you always want to put new ideas in. What are some principles, or how do you curate the content that you put in? Like, how do you choose what you learn? Like,
What you learn, yeah.
because
So
we live in a
during
world where there's just so much
so
out there,
many,
right? And a lot of it is very
mm-mm,
attractive, but maybe not so substantive. So I'm curious, like, what's your method of choosing what to learn?
method, follow their instinct and consume or experience a lot of kinds of content, and then you will have a guiding feeling of what works for you and what not. So for me, during that period of time, I needed to really learn how to be an expert in marketing. So I would commit to myself learning about digital marketing. So like any aspect of it. So just one article. And of course, during also that period of my life, I really am committed to developing myself. So I would read about self-development, practical tips on how to like be a better person, be more productive, and be motivated. Those things. So you need to have some sort of pillar, and the pillars you would know that by consuming a lot of things. You have this gravitating feeling towards something, and that's this
Okay.
is for you.
So start out being indiscriminate and go wide. And I actually think
Yeah.
I think that's a great philosophy in life in general. It's like you need to get volume and
Yes.
a variety of experiences across life so that you can discover what you
What
like, what you don't like. And you can't be discerning until you build the filter. You can't build the filter if you don't have the data.
exactly.
So go wide, but then start intentionally choosing the high quality things. And then the more
Mm,
you choose the high quality things, the better your filter gets. And then you start to outgrow them, and you start to find, does that sound, am I translating it back?
yeah.
Sound
Yeah,
good?
you're actually really translating that right. Another thing is like really knowing and searching for the right publishers. So that's another practical thing about this. Because like what just like you also said, there's so many content out there. But you really need to know who are like the thought leaders, the credible publishers, and whether it's self-development or whether it's like about beauty or what in web development, whatever that you are curious about, you really need to know who are the credible and the thought leaders in
Yeah.
that field, and you follow them and you consume their content. Because I'm also like a firm believer of like you are of not
Yeah.
necessarily just like internet content, but also movies, the books that you read, and even like people that you talk to. You absorb that, and then it just stays in your head, kind of like a sponge, actually. So then that's when you create it for you. So you need to be mindful of the things that you are consuming.
Okay. Go wide, get a lot of data, but don't keep doing that. Start finding the good stuff and then figuring out who the real authorities are that you trust. Yeah, I've done similar things. That's one of the hacks of learning and growth that I found the most reassuring. Okay, this is actually easy. You just find the people you really respect, and then you figure out, who do they learn from? What books did they read? Who were the people that, because they didn't become who they are by themselves. They are also a sum of all the people that they've been learning from. And I found like that spider web of that network of learning never ends, because you can just keep learning from different people. And a lot of times it gets better the more you, it's like, okay, this person's pretty cool, but then I learn from his mentor and it's like, oh my God, like even better. And then I go up another level and it's like, oh my God, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, there's like the wisdom out there is so much, really. There's no excuse of not learning anymore because it's so easy to access. Even like just conversation with people, even like people who probably think is not that, I would say, insightful. There's always insight out there. Well, what I would say is like learn to have this skill of listening, because if you do, yeah, there's always something to learn out there. When I say actually listening to yourself, to life, because that's how actually, like, I think how life works. If you are a keen listener, life is actually like guiding you what you
Giving
should
you
do.
messages.
Yeah.
Okay,
Even
let's
that
talk.
means,
Let's talk about that, because I think it's a fascinating. I mean, there's so many different threads we could pull on from this conversation that we just aren't going to get to today, but we'll definitely have to have more conversations in the future. But let's talk about that. Like, how did you learn to listen to yourself? How did you learn to listen to the universe, to life, to hear the things that you might otherwise go through life not hearing?
so actually, I would credit it. It would stem out into like being religious when I was younger, because I live in the Philippines. Catholicism, I studied in Catholic universities and schools. So also my mom was also that. So I was really into prayer and all those things. And it's like something that like, oh, my mom would always say to us, just pray, pray. Like before when I was younger, I was like, doesn't make sense. Why would you pray? And but I think to that's actually a hard question. How do you like learn to listen? So I think it's also like a muscle, because I would say there's always a little voice inside of you. Because I don't know if you have experienced this, but if you are talking to someone, you are consuming a content, or like watching or working, your body will have some sort of
Yeah,
alert,
yeah.
and it will drive you or make you gravitate into a certain point, or a certain thought. And it's like for us, sometimes you don't follow that thought, you don't follow that pleasure because of all the things that's happening in life. Maybe it's out of norm, but yeah. So then, if you do,
I was wondering if that's where you would go, is tuning in to the somatic or body sensations. I
yeah,
think for me, that's,
yeah, actually,
if I was going
and
to answer the question, that's where I would go. I think what I've discovered
yeah,
is that there's all these messages all the time that are happening
your
inside of
body,
us, tension, tingling, lots of different things. And I didn't used to know that was happening at all. I wasn't paying any attention. I had no idea that I had all this data available to me. One of my favorite, I don't know if you've come across her before, but probably not. She's not that well known, but Diana Chapman and Jim Detmer wrote a book called 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership. I might have mentioned it to you before, but she talks about a whole body yes. It's like when you're making a
whole body,
decision. And I just love that phrase, because if you're thinking about how aligned you are with something, whether it's a decision, a direction, whatever, like you can feel when you've got
you
whole
can
body alignment,
feel.
and it's not that common. It's like probably most of the time we don't have a whole body yes about things, and
Yeah,
we're still saying yes. We're still doing things that we don't really
exactly.
align with.
Actually, just like having this conversation with my friends, like I I think they actually asked me this too, like, how would, and then I would like, you really have to listen to what your mind, body, heart, and soul says, because it really does tell you. But I tell them, but the thing is, here's the catch. It's actually like easy to do that, but the journey to developing that skill is hard. And the thing is, in order to reach that certain of level of being a skillful listener of your own self, the irony of saying that is to actually like learning to always tune into yourself. And that means like going back to what we have said, learning how to do workouts or exercise, because that means you're pulling the power back into yourself again. Meditation too, it's all about yourself. And then reading too, it's all about yourself. Really just like fueling you up yourself.
Mm,
If you kind of like always do those things and build the habit and it becomes your superpower, then that will, you're gonna reap off all these benefits. You learn how to be a skillful listener to what your body, mind, and soul says, because you know yourself by now by doing or committing all to those things. It will tell you, oh, Jasmine, or like you don't want this, but the outside world wants this, and then it's
nice.
not allowed to you. You have to listen to it.
Beautiful.
And then that's when you also learn how to the superpower to be always on trust. Because I think it's just like a byproduct. Learning how to trust and listening is a byproduct of committing to self-care. And
Mm,
self-care practices is a bit different for each of us.
amazing. Last night in Scale U here in Dumagate, we were talking about the choice to dedicate oneself to life, to never ending learning, and making it a foundational part of your identity that, like, I am someone who will never stop growing and learning, and like that is like foundational to who I am. That this is a decision that I've seen some people make, not that many, because it requires being willing to question anything. And then when you run into the scary things you don't really want to question, you got to do it anyway. And when you're like, when something's uncomfortable, you can't run away from it. Like, it's a serious commitment, but
Is
it's also magical because you have this trust and belief that life will consistently continue to be exciting because there's always more to learn. Like, there's no such thing as a pinnacle, right? I want to just talk a little bit about that because you're one of the few people that I could definitely say from listening to you that you have built that identity. Like, you're saying, I am someone who is super committed to lifelong personal growth. Did that happen right in that dark time, or did that happen gradually? Or do you remember a time when you just said, okay, this is, how do you think that happened for you?
like that's why I always say that it took me like 6 years to have this. Because like it's a commitment of would this make sense? Like, how am I doing it, right? This is discipline. This is not fun at all. All those things are to like a 30-minute walk in the sun. Like all those things, it's a commitment. It's not really fun. That also how our brain works is we tend to to be lazy about these things because it requires us a lot of willpower, and our willpower on a daily basis is not, it runs out. So yeah, like it takes me a lot of time to also like, I would say, committed to it. Let's do it. Even if I fail today, tomorrow I will do. If I don't wake up 6 a.m. today and I wake up 1 p.m. today, I would still do it even like I wake up 1 p.m. So like I remember I went viral to TikTok, and then they would say, so how do you even start on this? Make a morning ritual. Try to be flexible. That's why I always say it's so necessary to be kind to
Yeah.
yourself.
When
So
you're saying the phrase be kind to yourself, and the phrase I've used is for, or similar, is forgive yourself quickly. And I think at least what I'm hearing there for me is, if you don't, you end up with a bad relationship with yourself, and you end up beating yourself up, and that just causes, it makes it much less likely that you're going to do it tomorrow. It just makes you feel bad about yourself. Like, I love that, just being able to, I think it's so critical that when we don't succeed today, that we decide to be flexible with ourselves and forgive ourselves quickly. Yeah, go ahead.
and
You have thoughts on that?
yeah, and just do it again. Like I told you, like consistency does. It's not a linear thing.
Yeah.
It goes up, it goes down, and
Yeah.
that's how life works. That's the pattern of life.
Right.
Up, down,
It's
down.
not a machine. It's not mechanical. It's like, it's organic, and
Yeah,
you got to
it's very.
flex with it.
Yeah, that's true. So you just try to live, but it sounds so easy when I say this, but it's not really easy. Like you really just need to. But I would say really the formula is really just to commit to it. Try to
Mm.
do it every day, and even small steps, steady and slow. I would say. Not even like it would take you 10 years. Why not? As long, at least you're like much more closer to self-love and self-trust way before you started that. So,
I was thinking about asking you, like, what's the ultimate payoff, but I don't think it's necessary to ask you that because anybody listening to you or seeing you is going to feel this amazing energy coming off of you. And they're going to be like, oh, I can see it. Like, obviously, the payoff is I get to maybe potentially live this fully as Jasmine is. I find you to be extremely inspiring. Even I've I've developed a lot of the same habits and I've experienced a lot of the same amazing feelings of learning how to love myself, and a lot of the things you're saying I can relate with. But at the same time, I think I've a little bit lost some of those routines that I had, the strength of them. And it's really inspiring for me to have this conversation and kind of just be reminded of the value. And so I just appreciate you and appreciate this conversation a lot. I just want to wrap up with a couple of questions that I like to ask at the end, and because
sure.
I know we're already over time, but
Oh yeah, we are.
so if you think about yourself 3, 4, or 5 years ago and yourself now, what's one aspect of you that's just completely changed or evolved or that you're really happy with?
I have peace now,
Nice.
and that peace is doesn't depend on anyone or anything.
Love
It
it.
comes to here.
And what's something you're still struggling with that's an area that you are working on or want to improve?
I would say control and trusting. I feel like, oh, she has so much self-trust. Still a work in progress, I would say. Because that means, oh, as humans, we survive in order to
So you
live
mean
life.
like the need for control, like letting
Yeah.
go of it?
Yeah. And just
Mm.
trust. You just let go and you trust. Like really jumping in. But
Yeah.
that's actually really crazy. It's like a goes against all your logical and rational reasons. So still a learning process, but every time like I still try to practice it, build that muscle. It just proves me that yeah, I should do it.
I would love to have another conversation another day about that topic because I struggle with believing so strongly in that principle that just seems
Mm,
to be so true. And yet at the same time, questioning myself when it comes to how much work I should be doing. I know there's no should, but like this narrative in my mind, questioning, am I doing enough? Am I working hard enough? And I have a hard time reconciling those two ideas sometimes, but we don't have time today, but I really would love to get your thoughts on it, maybe in
yeah,
another conversation.
another
Um,
conversation.
huh?
Yeah, and on another conversation. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's actually a broad topic, really.
Yeah, but it's something I struggle with, like working on just trusting. But then at the same time, I'm in that mode of trusting. I feel like sometimes am I really working hard enough? Am I doing enough to create the world that I want to see? All right. Thank you for today. Just really appreciate it. And I'm super grateful to know you and to be able to potentially work with you. And it's just amazing. So thank you.
Thank you also for inviting me for this and always having this kind of conversations because it's actually very grounding for me. It reminds me why I do what I do and why I'm still doing these things. So it's really good to be reminded.
A lot of good reminders today for me as well. Thank you,
Yeah.
Jasmine.
Thank you too.
Thank you so much for listening to this interview on Emerge Stories. We really hope that something here sparked your curiosity or maybe helped you think about something in your life just from a little bit of a different angle or perspective, maybe opened up your mind to something you might be able to do in your life to take more ownership of your own learning and growth. That's the goal of this show. So please join our community, like and share, and tell other people about these stories if they're meaningful for you. And thanks so much for being here.